In this week's Torah portion, we also meet one of our matriarchs. After Abraham and Sarah have passed, one of the servants, Eliezer, goes out into land to find the perfect match, the perfect wife for Isaac. And as Eliezer is traveling through the desert with his band of camels and who knows what other animals he had with him, he tells himself he's not looking for the most beautiful of women. He's not looking for the one who comes from the most money or the one who's the most connected in society. But he tells himself that the first person who comes out to offer this, weary traveler and his caravan sustenance and water, that's the person that Isaac is destined to marry. And sure enough, they come across Rebecca, they come across Rivka, and she rushes from her house the same way Abraham rushed to greet the three angels. And she offers not only Eliezer water from this desert well, but that she also offers to all of the animals, which our rabbis say is most important. She showed the very basics of kindness, of actions of kindness, which are so important. But at the end of our Amidah, there's a prayer in which the saying actions speak louder than words aren't necessarily always true. And I think that in today's world and today's political climate, that we're seeing that words actually cause a lot of damage, almost as much as actions. And so we have this reminder, Elohai Nesor, that God always guard our tongue, and that we always make sure that we speak words of kindness and blessing, because we know how much damage our words can actually cause in this world. And so I just encourage all of us to really think about the things that we're saying, the things that we're writing online, because as bad as everything seems right now, that if we all just see that B'Tselem Elohim, that image of God in the other person, whether it's face to face or whether it's behind our keyboards, that we always remember to have words and actions, kindness, the words of Elohai Nitzor. Elohai Nitzor leshoni mera ושפתיים מדבר מרמה וימכן אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי 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 ניצור לשוני מרע ושפתיים מדבר מרמה וימכן אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי אלוהי בתי אלוהי ניצור לשוני מרע ושפתיים מדבר מרמה וימכן אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי פתח ליבי פתח ליבי פתח ליבי אלוהי נצור לשוני מרע ושפתיים מדבר מרמה וימכן אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי 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 נצור לשוני מרע מדבר מרמה וימכן אליי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי אלוהי יהיו לרצון ימרפי והגיון ליבי לפניך Adonai, Adonai, Tzuri, Adonai, Tzuri, V'go.
So beautiful. So beautiful. God, guard my tongue from evil speech. Yes. Thank goodness you didn't go into opera or Broadway, Cantor Peicott, because we need you. You uplift us all with your beautiful music. The world has enough Broadway stars and opera singers. It doesn't have enough great
Thank you. I
cantors.
appreciate that.
That was really beautiful. We're going to enter now into moments of Mishaberach, and in keeping with this idea of speech and words. It is true that our words can cause terrible damage and terrible pain and suffering and hurt. But if that is true, and we know that it is, then the opposite is also true. That our words can uplift and inspire and heal. And that's really behind the thinking of the Mishaberach, this prayer that we say on behalf of people we love who are ill and who are suffering. And I'm going to say more about this in a little while in my Devar Torah, but let me just say that we are experiencing right now in our own congregation, not just in the city and in the state and in the country, an extraordinary wave of illness, most of it not COVID related, but we're just in one of those periods where we have so many temple families with loved ones who are suffering. And what can we do for them? What can we do? We can pierce their isolation by letting them know they're in our hearts and they're on our minds, that we love them, that we care. And we do that by praying for them with the words of the Mishaberach. Never underestimate the power of I am thinking about you. I care about you. I love you. Never underestimate the power of those words. And those are essentially the words of the Mishaberach. So let us begin.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Well, as I mentioned just a moment ago before the Mishaberach, we're experiencing quite a wave, and I've been a rabbi a long time. All of you know that, and I know that these things do tend to come and go in waves, and there are periods of immense illness and suffering in the families of our congregation, and we're in one of them now. My emails and my phone are just full of messages from people who have loved ones who are ill and who are suffering and who need help. And unfortunately, many who don't survive their illnesses and who die. And that leads us to this week's Torah portion. which is, in my opinion, the most mistitled Torah portion in the entire Torah. Normally, a Torah portion is named by the first few words it contains, but those first few words also kind of encapsulate the essence of the Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is called Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah. But it is entirely about her death and what happens after she dies. So it's called the life of Sarah, but it's actually about her death. It really, if it was to be titled properly by our standards, it really should be called the death of Sarah. This is the death of Sarah, and then go on to tell us the story about her death and Abraham negotiating for a burial place for her, and then appreciating her so much that he realizes it's time for Isaac to have his own marriage, his own wife, his own relationship of equal beauty and love and importance. And then Abraham dies at the end of the Parsha also. And yet it's called the life of Sarah. And it seems mistitled on the surface of it. But I can tell all of you, after all of these years of seeing so much death up close, that actually, I think the rabbis got the title for the Parsha exactly right. Because our deaths are really ultimately not about death. They're about life. They're about our lives. If you think about a funeral for a moment, are we ever really remembering or talking about the person's death at the time of death? No, we're reflecting on his or her life. If you think about walking through a cemetery for a moment, the headstones in a cemetery, they have a remarkable uniformity to them in terms of the language. When you have to distill a person's life down to 3 lines with 15 characters per line, you really have to exercise essentialism. You have to really pare things down to what matters. And how the person died is never, I have never seen it inscribed on a headstone. Only how a person lived. Things like loving husband, father, grandfather, friend, loving wife, mother, grandmother, friend. These markers for our resting places in death are always about our most sacred and important accomplishments in life. Eulogies written for us at the time of our death are never about how we died. They are always about how we lived. And hopefully, all of the death that is surrounding us now, all of these numbers on the news, all of these stories on the news, all of the fear we have about our own vulnerability and the vulnerability of people we love. We really have 2 choices when we're surrounded by that much death and suffering. We can allow it to focus us on death, or we can allow it to ennoble our lives. We can allow it to give us a greater sense of gratitude for our lives, a greater sense of gratitude for the daily blessings of life itself, for waking up in the morning, for coffee with a loved one, for the opportunity to guide our adult children through this difficult and mystifying time for them, for the opportunity to help our young children who really don't belong cooped up at home day after day, after week, after month, after what could be more than a year and maybe 2. We have an opportunity to embrace life in the midst of so much death, and to appreciate life and to count our blessings. And if that is the end result of COVID-19, then we will not have come out of the hell of it empty-handed. Kafka said the meaning of life is that it ends. In other words, death is the great teacher if it inspires us to really live while we are alive. So my hope with this seemingly mistitled Torah portion, the life of Sarah, which is ultimately about, the Torah portion is about her death, but it is also the rabbi's way of saying to us, our deaths really aren't about death. They're about our lives. That's what's remembered at the end, how we lived, not how we died. So let's embrace our lives. I hope that when this service is over, if you're living with people, you've got people close to you, hug them, kiss them, wish them Shabbat Shalom, unplug, get off social media, get off the news, and just count your blessings and hug and hold each other. And if you are alone tonight for Shabbat, when this service is over, Zoom with someone you care about, pick up the phone, reach out, pierce the isolation, and embrace life and embrace love. Because ultimately, the rabbis were right. Death is ultimately about the beauty and the power and the meaning of life and love itself. And I wish us all the wisdom to embrace that beauty and power and meaning tonight, tomorrow, and every day as we go through this difficult time together. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Beautiful.
Couple of quick announcements before we go on to continue and conclude our service with Kaddish. It's pretty much the same announcement I give every week, which is please pay attention to your emails. Every day we're reaching out to you. There it is. Please go to the temple website. Please check. Please take your emails from the temple seriously. We are all working so hard to create meaningful connection and meaningful content for all of you. So please, my one announcement tonight is to take your emails from the temple seriously, look at them, click on something, and join us, because we want you with us and we want to be with you. Made me so happy. I had my Torah study class today at noon, and there were, I don't know, maybe 45 or 50 people. We were all on the screen, and it was beautiful because we really were able to see each other and be together, even though we were apart. So we're reaching out to you. Please, please reach back. And then we'll all go through this with a much better and happier and more beautiful existence. And that's really